Good morning. Today's topic is around the conversation of tech neck. Tech neck is a term that has come up to describe a phenomenon in the human body that we're seeing right now, where the head is really jutting forward like this. When this head juts forward, a couple other things happen that we visually notice. Changes in the tissue underneath the jaw, the throat. We get the mum's hump in the back over time. But what's really important here is that we're putting the head in a position that it doesn't enjoy being, especially for a long period of time. Before I get into how we can correct this, it's important to understand how we get ourselves in that position in the first place. Because it's easy to see that and to say that looks gross and that causes pain, that causes a mum's hump, why am I doing that? When we get to understand the root of a issue or why we're doing a certain behavior or pattern, we can start to make conscious changes or switch things up. A lot of this has to do with our nervous system and our eyes. Our eyes are meant for both focused view and panoramic view. Focused meaning very fine, particular, small, detailed view, but then also wide panoramic view. What's interesting about this is that both of those two types of visual ways of looking at the world also come with a set of movements. Those movements often are very subconscious, but we can understand them. For instance, if I take out my phone right here and I start reading something and something is interesting to me and I really want to pay attention to it or it's eye-catching, then I'm going to do this. What? No. Oh my goodness. And I'm going to start to engage more with this, close out the rest of the world, and dive deeper into whatever is taking my attention. Same thing even with a phone, that makes sense. But let's say I was just to pick up this rock. If I was just to stare at this rock and try to examine it, I'd be here. But then if I saw something on the rock or like a little bug that caught my attention, oh my goodness, look at that little bug right here. So I would for a second, like a microscope, use my entire head like a microscope and come in here. And then as soon as I stopped caring about this bug or the bug flew away, then I would look back up and maybe I would have a wide surrounding environment that I could start to look at, and my head would go here. For instance, if I was looking at the rock and I saw a bug and then I heard a really loud sound, but I wasn't sure exactly where it was coming from, but it was in the distance, I would pull my head up and I would pull it back and really try and find where this sound is coming from or what big light source is trying to attract my attention. Most of the time in our early human days, we lived in the wide panoramic, always scanning our environment for threats, for food resources, for anything that we wanted to acquire. Most of life was lived in the panoramic most of the time. Wide open spaces. We kind of switched it up. Number one, now we're not in wide open spaces or in nature where you kind of have to constantly just be like scanning general views. Now we're most of the time spending time in buildings with 4 walls, which allows us to only have a certain depth of perception. And then we switched most of our concentration not on the wide panoramic, but a lot of times on things like the cell phone or the computer, reading. So many things we have available to us right now, and we kind of switch to this ability to do this. Whether you're drawing, painting, on the phone, writing, reading, anything that is going to be within your little periphery that you're going to be engaging in, we're going to have a proclivity to do this with our body, to really engage with it. This is a good thing that we have this ability. It means we can like dial in on something, so we like it. However, too much of it can be an issue, just like too much of anything. So that's one thing to recognize. If you're on the phone, especially if you're on a computer, if you're doing anything that is going to really engage your mind. Let's say you're just typing something on the computer, but then you make a mistake and you got to go in and you got to correct it, and you do this. Okay, I made that correction, and you come back in. And we're just kind of constantly in and out of this flow with our head. Obviously now we're recognizing it as a global phenomenon, or at least in the Western modern world, that people now are kind of locked in this position right here with the head leaning forward. The other reason that this is something that's present in a lot of our lives is because of the television. If I'm sitting in a seated position where I'm slumped forward like this is the couch position. In this slumped position, everything is moving forward. It doesn't make sense for me to pull my head back as everything is going forward. See, like how I'm talking is super strange. So instead, in that position, I'm going to naturally just follow the rest of my body and curve over like this. And then if I've got a TV to look at, I'll simply go right here. And I'll spend time right here. If I'm at a desk, I'll spend time right here, right here, right here. Oftentimes people complain of maybe just general neck and shoulder issues. They can have pain in the back of their neck. They can have pain on their traps right here, or the sides, top sides of the neck, shoulder. And they can have pain in the front of their shoulder, or even in the back of the shoulder. This is an entire system, and I want to talk about different ways that we can organize this system, different ways that we get into this system. Number one, if I'm sitting, let's say, at a desk typing or doing some computer work, and then I get a text message or something that I need to pay attention to, draws my attention, the first thing is my head, my eyes want to like really investigate this thing. So I start to really investigate this thing. As soon as I do that, even if I'm in this nice posture here, my shoulders are backing down, my chest is up, I'm feeling relaxed, I go here, I go do this movement. If you keep your shoulders back, down, chest up, and you do this movement, you'll immediately feel the tension in the back of your neck. If I feel the tension in the back of my neck, then the next thing my body is going to do is try and relieve that tension so that I can focus more. That's my task. What's going to happen is my shoulders are going to come to support that. So that's an easy test that you can do right now, is get into a good posture, push your neck forward, feel how much tension accumulates immediately when you do that, and simply drop your shoulders forward and notice how all of that tension seems to wash away. So this is like when people also talk about, oh, I got to get my shoulders, here and doing this. Well, if we're concerned about our shoulders going back in here, but our head is still going here, that wherever the head goes, the body will follow. So if your shoulders are chronically right here, most likely it's because your head is living in this position and your shoulders are coming forward to support it. This is going to cause a lot of tightness right here in the pec bicep kind of junction, and tension right here. The other way that we talked about is from the couch sitting, from the hips. So if my hips are back here, my shoulders are going to most likely find my hips. And if my shoulders are finding my hips, it's going to feel natural to pull my head right on top of my shoulders right on top of my hips. Everything's stacked up. However, if I go into a more modern sitting position where my hips are in front of my shoulders, I'm not going to want my hips going forward. I'm not going to pull my shoulders back in this position and rest like this. I can feel all this tension in my abdominals because my hips are going one way, my upper body is going another way. It takes tension away if my hips are going forward, now my shoulders go forward, and then my head goes forward. So that would be like a bottom-up way that we get into this tech neck position. Okay, so those are some big ways that we get in the tech neck position. Sitting, getting really focused on cell phones, computers, etc. So we want to start to talk about how we can fix this. Number one, if your neck is here and your shoulders are here, we want to know what it feels like to do the opposite and to take time during our day to do the opposite. And this is really important. The way that I like to teach this is through tummy time, being on the ground. We just basically do the opposite. If my head comes forward and down, I'm going to do the opposite on my stomach. I'm going to pull my head back and tall and find the back space. The biggest thing that we want is to keep the length from top of my head to that big protrusion in your spine. We want to keep that length. We don't want to shorten it. Shorten it, it looks like this. And so constantly in this tech neck position, we're shortened. Imagine if all day I held my arm like this. Eventually there would be a lot of tension built up. So any part of the body where we are contracting and shortening and holding it for long periods of times, you're going to be guaranteed there's going to be a crazy accumulation of tension, and that body part is going to want to return back to its lengthened, relaxed, and strong position. Strong and long is where the body wants to be. Strong and long. Okay, so this is going to be beginning to reverse tech neck. We're going to start on our stomachs. On our stomachs, we're going to put our forehead down on the mat. And my hands are going to be just in front of my shoulders, like this. If I ask some people to pick up their head, they'll literally pick up their head and do this. This, however, my argument to this is not picking up our head. This is picking up my chin. This is me picking up my chin. My chin picks up. Because now my head is actually being thrown backwards, and it's very short in the back space. So instead, we're just going to pick up our head, meaning the back of our head, as if someone were to come to our head and pick it up. Just grabbing that head and picking it up. There's no rotation, just simply grabbing the head and picking it up. So where do I lift up my head? It's going to come from a deeper place, more in that thoracic cervical spine. And we're just going to feel that. So I'm going to relax everything, use my hands and wrists for support, and pull my head up. Notice how my chin is slightly tucked. It's tucked, but it's also tall. So it's not tucked so I can't talk, but it's tucked and then it's tall. One cue I like to say that sometimes helps is chin tucked, ears tall, like as if somebody was pulling your ears this way or the crown of your head forward. Once we get to this position, what's great is that we can pull our shoulders down using the pull from the ground. And I'm going to breathe in through my nose into the back rib cage and then exhale into my stomach. I'm trying to get long still with that exhale. So I'm breathing into my back rib cage and then exhaling, trying to get long, trying to feel the whole back musculature of my neck. Slight movements just to feel the range here. And then I'll do this 2 more times. Relax everything. Find the center of where I lift up my head and lift it up like I'm floating. Doesn't have to be big, but now we're looking for length. If you want more length, or if you want to start to examine, then what I want you to do is to take your chin, and we're going to pull that chin to one armpit, and that same side ear is going to pull away from the armpit. So I'm going to go to my left side. I'm going to pull my chin to my left armpit, and then now I'm going to pull my left ear away from that armpit. And that's going to start to activate and lengthen that back side of the neck. And switch. I'm going to take my chin, I'm going to pull it to one armpit, my right armpit, and then I'm going to take that same ear and I'm going to pull it away. Boom. Fantastic. So this is the position, the long and strong position that we want to maintain basically throughout most of our day. Or I guess that's how the system was supposed to work. Most of our day was boom, here, boom, wide, and then every once in a while, boom, and then return back here, boom, and return back here. This does not mean don't ever do this. It just means that we're doing way too much of it. If this becomes our default, we have to make this our default. And then every once in a while, examine, investigate your surroundings, but then return back to what's normal here. It's difficult if you work in an office job or if you're on your phone a lot all day. So in order to do our office job, do anything with our hands, find things with our hands or with our phone, the best way that we can support ourselves is by going from that bottom-up organization, taking care of our hips so that it feels really unnatural for us to hang out here for a long time. If we're sitting in an office chair with our hips thrusted forward, it's going to be very natural for us to do this and no problem at all. So here's an example here. If you're on your phone, you're scrolling through social media, you're doing some text messaging, whatever it is, if I'm sitting in this position, hips are going to be in front of my shoulders, I'll be right here. All I have to do to really support my upper body, especially my neck, is get my hips back behind my shoulders. Boom. Okay, now my hips are back behind my shoulders, and I could be down here, texting. It'd be really weird for me to do this, texting. But it feels natural for me to do this same position. Okay, so here's on the ground, sitting position. If you're working on a computer from more of this position, whether it's an elevated seiza chair, elevated kneeling chair, we can be here taking care of our upper body in this way. Okay, so that's my big tech neck spiel, and that was just a quick introduction on how to get there, how to return back to there. Go to your stomach and feel the resistance of gravity to pull you into the backside, to pull you into what's right. And then, find a cue system that works for you, whether that's my chin goes back and tall, or pull my head back, my ears tall, but we're looking for everything to move into the backspace and then decompress and lengthen again. So it's the opposite of the tech neck. Tech neck is when everything compresses and shortens. We're trying to lengthen and get into the backside, decompress, get into the backspace, open up here. A really good indicator is if these muscles are super on all the time and you feel the tension here and you feel the tension here. These muscles, these SCMs can relax as soon as I go into the backspace. They can relax more. Those are the part of the front side muscles of the body that when I go this way, then they really turn on. But if I pull myself in the backspace, they can be much more relaxed, supported by the back of my neck. Back of the neck is really strong. It's meant to be here. Imagine if someone grabbed the back of your neck. You can really resist a lot with the back of your neck. But if someone was pushing here, like these muscles, not as durable, not as strong. Okay, that's the tech neck speech. Take care of yourself.